I want to show you step by step how to break down the information in your assessment outline and convert it into a checklist you can use to make your assessments easier and faster and even get you better grades. I'm going to show you a worked example as well so that you can do one for yourself. The first step in breaking down an assessment outline is to read it. It can be easy to rely on just what the lecturer tells us in class, but the assessment outline has everything we need to get full marks. It tells us exactly what we need to do. So I find it best to read it through once. I highlight any key points, the important bits. You can highlight it, underline it, whatever works for you. We then want to take those key points and make a bullet point list. I just copy and paste them straight over. Once I've got that bullet point list ready, I then add information to each of the key points that tells me what I need to do to get full marks. For example, if my outline said that I needed to do a 5-minute presentation, then I'd add a little note saying it needs to be between 4 and 6 minutes, because if I do something that's 3 minutes or 8 minutes, I'm going to lose marks. That's not what my lecturer is asking for. Once I've added that information, I turn my bullet point list into a checklist. And then I always find it best to reorder that checklist so I make it make sense in terms of the order of what I would do things. For example, the research first and then creating the actual assessment and then maybe editing. You don't want the checklist to jump around. Let's have a look at that example outline now. And this is a real example from a second-year geology class. They have to do a presentation. You can see the parts that I already highlighted, and sometimes assessment outlines are hard to read. They use complex sentences, right? And that's why breaking down an assessment outline is so helpful. So you can see here that I've highlighted the key points. Then I convert that down into my breakdown of information, my bullet point list. So first of all, it said that I needed to do a 5-minute presentation. So I've put there, a general rule of thumb is 1 slide per minute. So 5 slides of information would be ideal. 5 minutes, 5 slides. Obviously, if you have more than 10 slides, it's going to be too many. If you only have 3, it's probably not going to be enough. And those slides don't include, your title slide or your reference slide. But that's my little piece of information. So for 5-minute presentation, I know it needs to be between, 4 and 6 minutes. And now I know that I need, around 5 slides. The second point was to cover a minor topic in sedimentology. Now, this is actually important because it tells us to avoid major topics. A lecturer wants us to cover something small, something niche. This really helps us choose topics because the more narrow or niche a topic is, the easier it is to research. Big topics are really hard because there's so much information out there. The next one's a bit tricky. It says we need to apply critical, analytical, creative, and systematic thinking. But ultimately what that means is our lecturer doesn't want a presentation where we just explain something. They don't want us just to reiterate or restate information that's already out there. They don't want to listen to a dictionary. A great idea here is to pick a topic where there's multiple different sides to it, maybe an argument. They're the best because there'll be side 1 and side 2, and they'll both have examples or data to back each other up that you can discuss in your presentation. It's also key because of that point where they say analytical. A key point will be that you need to have your own perspective. So read through the literature on your particular topic, and then you have to pick your side. So for example, if it's a topic where there's an argument, you would need to side with one or the other and then explain why in your presentation. A good thing here is because you've had to pick a narrow topic or a niche topic, it's easier to find those sorts of snippets of information that you're going to need to make your presentation interesting and not just like a dictionary, like we said. The next point was that we need to have diverse views and knowledge systems. So this phrasing essentially just backs up what we talked about before. Our lecturer wants to see that we can incorporate multiple different views or concepts and deliver it in 1 to 2 slides. The next one was that it must not be covered in lectures. That's our topic selection, and that's a really helpful point. So we know whatever we've already looked at in lectures, we absolutely cannot touch for our presentation, otherwise we're going to lose marks, and that's not what we want. One thing to double check here though with your lecturers, because they've said that they really want a narrow or niche topic, is potentially while a broader topic has been discussed in class, we may be still allowed to cover a niche topic within that. For example, maybe they discussed volcanoes in class, but we want to do a presentation on how carbonatite volcanoes form. And the lecturer might be fine with that because that particular niche topic was not covered in class. I always recommend asking your lecturer or confirming your topic before you start researching it, because I have seen so many cases where students have done heaps of work on a presentation and then had to start from scratch just because of their topic selection. So pick a topic and then just double check it's okay first. Then the assessment outline said that we need to focus on primary journal articles. This is also really helpful because it tells us we need to use peer review journal articles that are research articles, because research articles are that primary source. It means they've actually created or generated the data themselves, as opposed to, say, a literature review. That's not a first-hand or primary journal article. Web pages, textbooks, and things like that can be used, but sparingly. You don't want to use them a lot. You really want that journal article focused. Because it's in your assessment outline, that means there's marks allocated for it, so it's pretty easy. Go and find those journal articles and tick that off and get those marks. And each of those journal articles is also really helpful to use as a case example for your presentation. For example, maybe your presentation explains the basics of it and then goes into detail by providing a case example, and that demonstrates the description or detail from that particular journal article. Then we need to compile a one-page note sheet summarizing the topic or presentation. So a one-page note sheet tells us that it's probably around a 1 A4 piece of paper. We don't want to write 2. Again, the marks allocated will be that we've completed a one-page note sheet. Now it should have the title of my presentation, my name, and then have the key points of the entire presentation. Because it's a summary of the presentation, you want to have those key points, but you also want to have an image. Don't just make it about text. The other thing here is if you struggle with public speaking, like almost everybody does, this one note sheet, for example, is the perfect place to show your lecturer and the person marking your presentation that you know what you're talking about. That's the place to do it. The next part was that we need to convey the key points or the figures and references in that one-page note sheet. So that just tells us again that they don't just want a list of text, that they want those key images or figures, and that we have to have our references. So we need to squeeze those in on that sheet as well. Now that we've broken down the information and had a thought about what we need for each of those parts, we want to turn it into a checklist. So here's the checklist that I would create for this assessment outline. First of all, I would need to select a niche topic that has peer-reviewed journal articles available for research. So I would do a quick search before finalizing the topic. Then I want to make sure the topic has multiple theories, angles, arguments, something that I can research and discuss in the presentation. And I would select 2 journal articles to use as case studies. I would select 2 because the presentation is 5 minutes. So that gives me just enough time to talk about each of them. I would confirm the presentation topic with a lecturer before starting, 100%. I would research the topic using only peer-reviewed research journal articles, and I know I would need at least 2 references because I would be using those as the case studies. I would then create my presentation slides. I put that down in the checklist because I have to do that. I would have a title slide, a topic overview slide, and then I would have slides for the different aspects of the topics and my case studies, and then a strong conclusion that includes my opinion. I would always have a thank you slide. That's optional, that's just me, or maybe a slide that says, does anyone have any questions? And then I would have my references at the end. Usually you don't need to show your references in your actual presentation, but when you're finished and you said thank you, you just hit the key on the keyboard to show your reference slide. So that tells me I need between 5 and 7 slides of content. I would need a 5-minute presentation, and I would practice so that I was within that limit by 30 seconds ideally. I generally talk much faster when it comes time to actually doing a presentation than when I practice, but as long as when I practice it's around that 5-minute mark, I know it's pretty much going to be okay with a lecturer. Then I would need, after I've created my presentation slides, I would need to create that one-page note sheet. Remembering all it's doing is summarizing my presentation slides. So I've already got all the information I need. I just need to put it on a piece of paper. So I would have the presentation title, my name, key points, my main image, any headings or subheadings maybe to separate out the content, or maybe my 2 arguments or case studies, and then my references. Then I've made a note there that I would print the one-page note sheet, but that will depend on your assessment outline. You might just need to submit it electronically. The fact the assessment outline says that I need to create it for the class suggests that I might have to print a few copies. But again, double check with the lecturer. You don't want to be doing more work than what you needed, that's for sure, because doing more work than what you need or different work doesn't give you more marks. Just giving the lecturer exactly what they want in their assessment outline gets you the full marks.